Jealousy, inspiring friendship in New York. High school life in the suburbs of New York had always been vibrant for the four girls. Madison, 17, Chloe, 18, Riley, 17, and Ava, 17, were more than just classmates. They were inseparable. From sleepovers filled with whispered secrets to wild adventures exploring the buzzing city on weekends, they created a world of their own, colored by inside jokes, heartfelt promises, and dreams scribbled into yearbooks. Each girl brought something unique to the friendship. Madison was the spontaneous, sharp-witted leader who could make anyone laugh. Chloe, the older and slightly more disciplined one, was forever striving for excellence. Her ambition matched only by her compassion. Riley added creativity and a fearless spirit, always ready to try something new, while Ava was the emotional anchor, unfailingly loyal and empathetic. Their bond was the envy of many. Teachers and classmates alike saw them as a shining example of sisterhood, confident, determined, and united in their quest for greatness. They encouraged each other's passions, spent countless nights tutoring one another for AP exams, and cheered the loudest at sports games and theater shows. But beneath the laughter and affirmations lay something more complicated. Academically, Madison and Chloe typically outperformed the rest of the group. Their names often flashed together at the top of honor rolls and award lists, unintentionally sparking comparisons. The looming prospect of college applications and prestigious scholarships cast a subtle tension as successes became increasingly individual. Still, their friendship seemed unbreakable, at least on the surface. As senior year progressed, pressure from families, expectations from teachers, and their own ambitions began to test the boundaries of trust and loyalty. What started as friendly rivalry was now tinged with anxiety and unspoken jealousy. Yet, even as cracks began to show, the girls held on to each other, and the world around them kept watching, unaware of the brewing storm underneath their perfect friendship. The secret behind their success, while their friendship outwardly shone, something more complex simmered underneath, especially between Madison and Chloe. Both stood at the academic pinnacle of their class, often vying for top honors and leadership positions. Each achievement was met with an enthusiastic group hug and supportive cheers, but those accolades grew heavy with expectation. Rumors swirled in the hallways that only one student from their high school would earn the coveted Manhattan Foundation scholarship, a golden ticket that could launch a dream career. Madison, with her natural charisma and talent for debate, had always seemed the favorite, winning over teachers and judges alike. Chloe, meticulous and disciplined, put in hours at the library no one else saw, quietly determined to carve her own path. As the scholarship race intensified, both girls pushed themselves harder, sometimes at the expense of sleep, social time, and even small kindnesses. There were days their smiles felt practiced, and moments when compliments hid questions or quiet doubts. Riley and Ava observed the mounting tension with concern, but hesitated to interfere, worried that choosing sides would fracture the group for good. Meanwhile, the realities of competitive high school life in New York made even minor setbacks feel monumental. Every test score, every extracurricular lead, every whispered comparison from peers or teachers had new weight. Madison and Chloe found themselves brushing off small slights, burying insecurities, and promising that at the end of it all, their friendship would survive anything. But secrets do not stay buried for long. As the scholarship deadline approached, Chloe made a decision that forever changed the balance between them. A choice rooted in ambition, worry, and a sharp fear of being left behind in the city they all dreamed of conquering. The ruthless trap, the anxiety in the group was palpable as spring edged closer. Decisions made in shadowy corners began to shape all their futures. With the scholarship deadline just weeks away, Chloe struggled with waves of insecurity. Her late-night study sessions stretched longer. Her interior dialogue churned with what ifs. What if Madison got the recommendation? What if all her sacrifices, her sleepless nights, were for nothing? Then, an unexpected moment gave Chloe the opening she hadn't even known she was waiting for. One afternoon, Madison asked Chloe to help edit her application essay. It was a sign of trust. Madison hadn't shown her work to anyone else yet, and rumors swirled about which applicant the influential guidance counselor truly favored. Chloe's hands trembled slightly as she scanned the pages on Madison's laptop, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. As she read, temptation gnawed at her. Chloe knew how close their scores were, how little separated her from Madison in the eyes of the selection panel. What if, she wondered, that gap could quietly widen? What if just one piece of evidence planted in the right place could tip the scales? The moral lines blurred under the fluorescent lights of the library that evening. Chloe's decision was both impulsive and meticulously planned. When Madison stepped away to take a phone call in the hallway, Chloe's eyes flicked to a USB drive she always kept in her backpack. It would be easy. Copy a few files over, plagiarism guides, templates downloaded from old forums, anything that might look suspicious if found on Madison's computer. Then, erase her own tracks. That one action, Chloe convinced herself, would secure her future. Heart racing, she executed the plan with a calm that surprised and scared her. She finished just as Madison returned, masking her guilt with a smile that felt stiff around the edges. Helping Madison save the file, Chloe's mind whirred with rehearsed casualness. No one would suspect. No one would know. The next day, Madison's application, flagged by a plagiarism detector, fell under scrutiny. The principal called her in. She was lost, blindsided, protesting her innocence as rumors flared and trust began to fracture. The guidance counselor, who'd once seemed so certain of Madison's integrity, listened with narrowed eyes. Official procedures moved fast. A scholarship panel was convened. The foundation's terms were strict. Madison was told she was under review for possible misconduct, a situation that nearly no one ever truly recovered from, at least not in the cutthroat world of elite college admissions. Chloe watched, half exhilarated, half ashamed. The friend she'd admired and envied all her life was spiraling. Confused, Riley and Ava gathered around Madison, outraged and desperate to help. But nothing about the digital evidence could be explained away. As the school whispered about the scandal, Chloe felt the cold weight of her success growing heavier every day. In the weeks that followed, Chloe was commended for her own spotless record by teachers and quietly encouraged by the guidance office to move forward with her scholarship application. She played her role well, subtly sad, publicly supportive, but never quite protesting Madison's fate. Chloe watched Madison struggle with meetings and investigations, watched her friends strain to defend her against a rumor mill that had turned vicious overnight. Still, Chloe's victory tasted bitter. Nights became a series of restless twists in bed. She thought of all the years of friendship, the promises that now lingered as empty echoes. But she kept up appearances, hoping the storm would pass, believing she had done what was necessary in a world where only one girl could win. Chloe never admitted her guilt, not even when the scholarship was officially taken from Madison. not when her own acceptance letter came. She told herself she'd simply seized an opportunity, that it was fair in love and war. Yet, even as the curtain fell on that chapter, Chloe felt watched by eyes no one else could see. Every congratulations echoed with accusation. Every smile from Riley and Ava grew tighter, less certain, as if they sensed the story was far from finished. And deep inside, Chloe could not silence the question. In trying to secure her future, had she destroyed her soul? The price of betrayal, the aftermath of Madison's downfall, was felt in every corner of Ridgeway High. Overnight, the once golden circle of friends was thrust into a cold, alien spotlight. Madison became a cautionary tale, a silent shadow in hallways she used to command. Her laughter replaced by a haunted stillness that unsettled everyone who remembered her as the school's sunniest force. She would walk, head down to class, eyes fixed on her sneakers, ignoring whispers that twisted like knives behind her back. Even teachers, before so supportive, now exchanged wary glances whenever she entered the room, some out of suspicion, others simply out of helpless pity. At home, Madison's life unraveled in private, too. Her parents, always proud, now grew tense and silent. They spent long evenings behind closed doors, reading emails from the scholarship committee and forwarding pleas for reconsideration. Her mother tried optimism to the point of denial, pasting on brave smiles and insisting that the truth always comes out. Her father pored over the school's honor code, his pride bruised by every unanswered question. Madison felt adrift, living in a house filled with anxious murmurs, avoiding calls from relatives who used to brag about her at family dinners. Riley and Ava, Madison's longtime confidants, found themselves at a crossroads. Old group chats became graveyards of unread messages. Riley, fiery and impulsive, wanted to initiate a campaign to clear Madison's name, while Ava, ever the peacemaker, thought perhaps the best thing was to let wounds heal over quietly. Both were haunted by the sense that something deeper was wrong, that the narrative being spun by the administration didn't quite fit the friend they knew. Meanwhile, Chloe walked the halls, carrying the weight of her secret. Teachers now praised her resilience and unquestioned integrity. A bitter irony. She received a discreet nudge from the school counselor to proceed with her own scholarship application, now that the air had cleared. On the outside, Chloe wore an aura of humility. She commiserated with Madison's supporters and expressed hope that the misunderstanding would be sorted out. But privately, every congratulation, every sympathetic smile felt like another grain of guilt buried deep beneath the surface. Madison, fighting to clear her name, pieced together every memory of the days leading up to the scandal. She lost herself in hours of retracing her steps, analyzing every file she'd saved, replaying moments in the library. Why would she jeopardize everything for which she'd worked so hard? Nothing made sense. Even her parents began to ask careful, searching questions, sometimes slipping into accidental accuse. Trust in teachers, in friends, even in herself, eroded by the day. As the weeks crawled by, the scholarship committee made its decision. Madison was officially disqualified from consideration. The decision, posted quietly on a school bulletin board and sent out in a terse email, landed with gut-wrenching finality. Chloe, meanwhile, was invited to interview as the top remaining candidate, a hollow triumph. But victory did not bring peace. Chloe's dreams were invaded by Madison's voice, confused, betrayed, earnest. She began to question her own reflection. wondering what winning really meant. She found herself avoiding Riley and Ava more and more, fearing their suspicions, racked by the slow realization that every selfish choice leaves scars even when no one else sees them. Worse, Madison began to assemble pieces of the story. She noticed oddities, timestamp discrepancies, files in her application folder she didn't remember, the faint whiff of someone else's fingerprints. Her parents were determined to fight on, even hiring a specialist to review her laptop. The tide of public opinion began to shift, slowly, unevenly.
Hey there.
As doubt spread
the
about
new
the
student.
plausibility of her guilt,
Madison.
Riley and Ava, now convinced something didn't add
did
up,
it.
started their own quiet
Finally
investigation,
over.
collecting any fragments they could. The friendships among the four girls, once as seamless as a picture-perfect Instagram post, were now webs of suspicion, avoidance, and hurt. Trust was no longer given, but begged for. Every smile came with a question. Madison and Chloe stood on opposite sides of a chasm. Neither had intended to dig, but now both were trapped within. And in this new landscape, the real price of Chloe's betrayal slowly came due.
Thank you so much.
She
for
had
your
her
help.
shot at the scholarship, but at the cost of her peace, her oldest friendships, and perhaps the respect she once had for herself. Sometimes, she realized, the heart breaks, not from what others do to us, but from the things we do when we think no one will ever know. A bittersweet revenge unfolds in the weeks following Madison's fall from grace. The air at Ridgeway High was charged with rumors and suspicion, but beneath that, something quieter was building, the spark of resolve in Madison herself. If there was one thing the city had taught her, it was resilience. She refused to fade quietly into the shadows of scandal and whispers. It started small. Madison, though deeply hurt, stayed sharp and observant. She noticed how Chloe avoided her gaze in the halls, how every conversation with Ava or Riley felt tense and clipped. Rumors now circled just about the scandal, but about odd details. Madison herself had begun to piece together the timing of her file's corruption, the unlikely ways evidence had surfaced, the sudden, subtle shifts in Chloe's behavior. Late one night, as rain pattered against her bedroom window, Madison faced a truth that was as painful as it was clarifying. She'd been betrayed by the person she'd trusted most. The realization didn't freeze her. It fueled her. Madison wanted redemption, yes, but more than that, she needed truth for herself and for every friend who'd ever believed the world was fair. And as much as her heart ached, she also wanted Chloe to answer for what she'd done, laying the groundwork. The first step, allies. Madison quietly reached out to Riley. She didn't unload her suspicions right away. She simply asked if Riley, the group's artist and tech whiz, could help her sift through old laptop backups. Riley, who had always felt something off about Madison's supposed cheating, agreed without hesitation. The two spent hours hunched over Madison's files, poring through logs and timestamps, looking for clues others had missed. Meanwhile, Ava, a peacemaker by nature, struggled with her own doubts. She felt the rift opening wider between Chloe and the other girls, and her loyalty to Madison gnawed at her. Each time Chloe brushed aside questions or offered one too many excuses, Ava soon joined the investigation, bringing her knack for observation and level-headed calm into the mix. The trio began to move quietly, gathering bits of digital residue, piecing together the digital breadcrumbs Chloe hadn't realized she'd left behind. Madison carefully recorded every finding, compiling a dossier, a digital timeline mapping out exactly when her documents had changed, cross-referencing it with library security footage, not all of which had been erased. It didn't take long before timelines and stories started to fracture. Logins that couldn't have been hers. Chloe's digital fingerprints in places they shouldn't have been. And blurred security footage showing Chloe alone in the library right when the critical incident occurred. Yet Madison knew evidence wasn't enough. The school, traumatized by the initial scandal, wasn't likely to reverse its decision without a dramatic, public airing of truth. And so, with Riley and Ava's encouragement, they hatched a plan for their reckoning. A plan both careful and bold, demanding Chloe face what she'd done before the eyes of those she'd fooled. The graduation party, showdown. Graduation at Ridgeway High was both a painful milestone and a moment of communal catharsis. The ceremony would be hosted in a grand old hall packed with parents, teachers, the scholarship committee, and the entire senior class. Everyone who'd followed the drama as spectators. Madison's plan leveraged the very platform that had once shown her at her best. Now, it would become the stage for her revival. On the eve of graduation, Riley and Ava quietly distributed invitations to a private after-party in one of the event's side rooms, ostensibly for their friend group and anyone who wanted to celebrate new beginnings. But behind the closed doors, the real agenda was far more pointed. As guests filtered in, Madison stood at the front alongside Riley. Projector screens flickered to life. Madison, her voice steady but tinged with raw emotion, thanked everyone for coming and addressed the painful rumors that had haunted her senior year. Then, one by one, she and Riley presented their findings. Screenshots of digital records, discrepancies in login locations, and, with a sharp inhale from the crowd, snippets of the library CCTV footage. Ava, eyes locked on Chloe, read aloud from timeline notes that highlighted Chloe's movements, down to the minute. Chloe froze beneath the spotlight. As the evidence mounted, so did the gasps and shouts from classmates. The guidance counselor, who'd privately nudged Chloe ahead amid her spotless record, sat stone-faced in the front row. Teachers shifted, uncomfortably, as the carefully curated narrative unraveled before them. When the last file was displayed, Madison addressed Chloe directly. There was no sugarcoating in her voice, only disappointment, mingled with the faintest tremor of nostalgia for what they'd once had. I wanted to believe we were different. I wanted to believe you were my sister, that we'd rise together, but you stole my future.
That is the connection we needed.
Now, everyone can see it. The silence that followed was electric and long. The aftermath of truth. The revelations sent shockwaves through the room. Chloe stammered denials, her composure slipping away with every word. But the evidence was irrefutable. The scholarship committee announced an immediate review, while teachers and students alike began murmuring apologies to Madison, some even turning away from Chloe as she stood, stricken and pale, in the middle of the room she used to command. But as the dust settled, Madison found her revenge was not at all sweet. She felt momentarily vindicated, yes, but also hollow, heavy with what had been lost. She watched Chloe break down in tears, watched Ava and Riley cluster at her side as the crowd dispersed in uneasy silence. In that moment, Madison knew that true strength had never been about besting Chloe, or even reclaiming her reputation. It was about standing up for herself, about showing her whole school and herself that the truth mattered, that friendship deserved better than envy and sabotage. Still, the pain lingered. As the crowd scattered, a few old friends offered quiet congratulations, but most seemed unsure, wary of the broken bonds and ruined futures. Madison stepped out into the fading golden light of a New York evening. Breathing in the cold, complicated air, she was free from lies, But something softer, sadder, remained. The memory of 4 girls who once believed nothing could come between them. But Madison refused to carry only bitterness. In exposing Chloe for what she'd done, Madison wasn't just seeking payback. She was fighting for a future, untarnished by someone else's choices. She walked home that night with her head held high, ready to start again, knowing that her journey from victim to survivor was the most meaningful victory of all. The bitter collapse. In the aftermath of Madison's public vindication and Chloe's exposure, the landscape of Ridgeway High was forever altered. The corridors, once bubbling with laughter and plans for the future, now echoed with uncertain footsteps, tense glances, and whispered questions. It was not just Chloe who felt the sting of humiliation. The entire institution, from student cliques to faculty lounges, had to wrestle with the weight of a broken illusion. For Chloe, the world shrank dramatically overnight. She'd once been admired for her poise and intellect, her reputation seemingly untouchable, her future dazzling beneath a canopy of accolades. After the graduation night confrontation, however, that persona became a ghost, haunting every classroom and hallway she entered. Her name, once spoken with admiration, was now mentioned in hushed tones, sometimes out of sympathy, far more often with scorn or disbelief. Former friends pulled away, some out of fear they'd be tainted by association, others out of outrage at the betrayal. Even those who attempted to show kindness did so with hesitation, unsure how to bridge the chasm between what Chloe had done and what she had been. She found herself trapped in a liminal space. Not quite a villain, not quite a victim. At home, her parents struggled to make sense of the scandal. The once lively dinner conversations were now fraught with tension. Her mother cycled between blame and consolation, sometimes breaking down in tears, while her father remained distant, anger simmering beneath a mask of silence. The family, already stretched thin by the pressures of college admissions and career ambitions, found themselves unraveling ever further, unable to agree on a way forward. Chloe's younger siblings watched in discomfort, learning new lessons about trust, shame, and the fragility of family bonds. Meanwhile, the official aftermath unfolded with bureaucratic precision. The foundation scholarship, which Chloe had once coveted, was revoked following an internal review. The committee's email was cold and terse, referencing serious violations of conduct and integrity. News spread quickly, even beyond the walls of Ridgeway. Some in the broader academic community dissected the case as a cautionary tale, using Chloe as an example in assemblies and newsletters about ethics and competition. Chloe's inbox filled with messages. Some messages of support from distant relatives, many more from strangers and classmates offering unsolicited advice, condemnation, or savage memes. Overnight, she became both a spectacle and a warning. The school administration handled the fallout with a mixture of relief and embarrassment. They issued carefully worded statements about their commitment to integrity and learning from mistakes. Yet, the trust between students and authorities was fractured. Rumors abounded about who had known what and when, and whether the school had truly done enough to prevent, detect, or rectify the sabotage. Guidance counselors, so quick to champion Chloe just months before, now kept their distance or nervously checked their notes when she sought meetings. Teachers struggled to hide their awkwardness, some expressing muted sympathy, others glossing over her presence as if she'd become invisible. Chloe's daily life devolved into a series of rituals designed more for survival than redemption. She stopped going to her favorite coffee shop, avoided group study sessions, and quit most extracurricular activities. Even the simple act of walking down the hallway felt like navigating a minefield, a gauntlet of stairs and whispered conversations, abruptly silencing as she approached. In the tautitithier privacy of her room, Chloe sifted through the fragments of her former life. She reread old messages in group chats with Riley, Ava, and Madison, each ping a reminder of what she'd destroyed. She stared for hours at the acceptance letter she'd received before the scandal broke, now a hollow trophy. College, once a beacon of hope, loomed ahead with uncertainty. Every application was tainted by revelations about her character. Would she even be welcomed on another campus? Did she deserve to be? The psychological toll ran deep. Chloe began to withdraw, struggling with insomnia and bouts of anxiety so intense they left her breathless. She considered apologizing, truly apologizing, not just to Madison or the school, but to herself. Yet the words caught in her throat, thwarted by pride in the awareness that some wounds cannot be unmade by mere confession. Her parents attempted interventions, therapy appointments, long drives meant to spark conversation, even a family trip intended for healing. But the guilt Chloe carried was a private burden. She began journaling, pouring her regret and confusion onto the page, a process that sometimes offered clarity, often only deepened the ache. The future felt like a story that was no longer hers to shape, every possibility colored by what she'd lost when she chose betrayal. Elsewhere, the other girls in their fractured quartet tried to move on. Riley dove into her art, painting canvases that pulsed with anger, heartbreak, and ambiguous hope. Ava buried herself in volunteer work, hoping selflessness might dull her own sense of loss. Madison, though finally cleared of wrongdoing, bore her own scars. Vindication did not erase the months of shame, the self-doubt, or the friendships destroyed in the fallout. She, too, circled around Chloe's name in her mind, wondering if she'd ever find closure. As graduation season gave way to summer, Ridgeway High tried to regain its former rhythm. But a subtle chill lingered. A cautionary silence fell over remnants of once thriving friend groups. The anti-cheating workshops and assemblies organized by the administration served as awkward reminders of what had been lost. School counselors issued platitudes about resilience and second chances, but even they seemed uncertain about who, if anyone, would truly find either. Chloe began to experience the long, slow arc of consequence, not just for her reputation, but for her sense of self. There were days when she imagined leaving town, starting over where no one knew her, or the story that followed her like a shadow. Yet that fantasy was pierced by reality, digital footprints, scandal, and living in her own skin. In the weeks following the scholarship's revocation, Chloe's emotions swung between numbness and acute pain. She replayed the fateful moments in the library, the temptation, the decision, the fear, over and over, shrinking from the version of herself she no longer recognized. She often found herself typing unsent apologies to Madison or to Riley and Ava. The words always felt inadequate. How do you say sorry for destroying something beautiful for ambition's sake? To her parents' relief, Chloe eventually agreed to see a counselor outside of school. There, in the quiet office, she tried for the first time to name the motivations and the fear that had driven her. The counselor listened without judgment, helping guide Chloe toward the possibility of forgiveness, not from the world, but from herself. It was a long road, and progress was frustratingly slow. Some days, Chloe clung to anger and denial. On others, she was overcome by honest grief for the friendships reputation, and self-respect she'd sacrificed. As the months passed and the story faded from daily gossip to local legend, Chloe's existence became quieter, but no less solitary. Few classmates reached out. Even fewer persisted past her initial walls. One afternoon in late July, Chloe sat on the swings at the deserted playground where, years earlier, she and Madison had mapped out dreams for the future. The metal chains creaked. The summer air was thick with memory. And for a moment, Chloe allowed herself to mourn not the loss of status or opportunity, but the loss of genuine connection and trust. At Ridgeway, teachers and administrators conducted a post-mortem on the affair. Some advocated for more rigorous technology checks or honor code reforms. A couple of teachers quietly wondered if more empathy or less pressure might have saved all these students from the worst versions of themselves. The incident cast a long shadow over future classes, frequently referenced in cautionary tones by those who had witnessed its fallout firsthand. Madison, meanwhile, poured her energy into rebuilding. She embraced new friends, found mentors outside the school, and threw herself into community service and creative pursuits that had nothing to do with awards or recognition. Although a trace of hurt would always linger in her smile, she carried the experience as both wound and wisdom, a reminder that resilience isn't about escaping pain, but about growing beyond it. For Riley and Ava, the collapse of their quartet forced an early reckoning with the complexities of loyalty, forgiveness, and self-worth. They drew closer to Madison, both regretting their hesitation during the scandal, and vowing quietly never to let ambition or jealousy override honesty again. Both girls chose, in their own ways, to take responsibility for the silences and complicities that had let Chloe's treachery go unseen for so long. Together, they channeled their sorrow into action, tutoring younger students, organizing peer support groups, and helping to rebuild the very community torn apart by envy. Despite everything, Chloe's journey was not entirely doom and gloom. As autumn approached, she managed small steps forward, enrolling in online classes, reconnecting with a childhood friend outside of Ridgeway's orbit, even applying to volunteer programs where her story and her remorse might serve as a warning to others. The future was still uncertain, but as she began to find her voice again, it was no longer defined solely by her downfall. In the end, the bitter collapse of trust and ambition served as both a closing and an opening, a harsh lesson in the price of betrayal, and a hesitant invitation to begin again, not by erasing the past, but by living honestly in its shadow. It was from the ashes of what had fallen that both Chloe and those she had hurt discovered, however tentatively, the possibility of rising anew, closing a chapter, starting anew. The months following the storm at Ridgeway High were unlike anything any of the girls had ever known. The drama that had shaken their senior year was officially behind them, but the ripples extended far into the future, coloring everything with the muted shades of hard-earned wisdom. Each girl's journey toward healing and self-discovery unfolded along a different path, and the city that once seemed so full of promises now shimmered with the complexities of coming of age in a world where trust could be cracked and, just sometimes, remade. For Madison, vindication did not mean an instant return to happiness or the girl she once was. She felt her old life was gone for good, as if the laughter from sleepovers and city adventures belonged to someone else. Yet, within her, a new resilience had taken root. Rather than dwell on resentment or regret, she found herself reaching for new experiences. Madison threw herself into a summer job at a bustling Manhattan bookstore, where the endless flow of people and stories inspired her. And strangers' curiosity was never about her past. Each day, she rebuilt her sense of self, brick by brick, learning how to forgive both Chloe and herself, not with naivete, but as a conscious release. She also began volunteering at a local community center, helping younger students prepare for high school transitions. Having experienced the sharpest edges of betrayal and public judgment, Madison offered her mentees more than academic advice. She gave them a blueprint for grace under pressure, honesty in the face of injustice, and, most crucially, the courage to stand up for themselves without destroying others. The city that had nearly broken her became Madison's training ground for empathy, the rarest and hardest won superpower of all. Outside work and volunteering, Madison made peace with her own aspirations. Acceptance letters from prestigious colleges still arrived, some even offering new scholarships after the truth of her ordeal became widely known. But the process left her forever wary of easy ambition. She chose her next steps with deliberation, a gap year of independent study, travel, and self-reflection before college, rejecting the urge to measure her worth by external achievements, and instead defining success as personal growth. For Riley and Ava, the after effects of that fateful year shaped their friendship in profound ways. Gone was the naive sweetness of their early high school days, replaced with a more honest, sometimes raw intimacy. They, too, had been changed, not only by watching Chloe and Madison's relationship implode, but by the difficult reckoning with their own complicity. Riley, always the artistic soul, used her experiences to drive her art further than ever before. In paint, clay, and even street murals, she explored themes of trust, guilt, and redemption, sometimes literally sketching the outlines of old wounds. Her projects often drew curious onlookers, and the act of creating became both therapy and testimony. Ava's approach to healing was quieter, but no less profound. She increased her dedication to service, tutoring, organizing mental health workshops, and supporting anti-bullying campaigns throughout the city. Determined to rebuild a kinder school community, Ava channeled her own regrets into projects designed to ensure other students would never feel so silenced, so isolated, or so desperate for validation. She and Riley remained close, bound by the decisions they'd made and the lessons learned. And even in their disagreements, their friendship felt stronger for its honesty. For the first time, both girls embraced the idea that real closeness means facing uncomfortable truths, not pretending everything is okay. Meanwhile, Chloe's path forward was the most difficult to navigate. After the scholarship was revoked and her reputation tarnished, she found herself bearing the double weight of public scrutiny and personal guilt. The girl who was once praised for her discipline and leadership now had to craft a new identity in the shadow of her own mistakes. For weeks, Chloe left the house only when necessary. She scrolled past her old friends' updates on social media, alternately missing them and resenting their ability to move on. With encouragement from her parents and a sensitive counselor, she began to work through layers of remorse and self-criticism. The therapy sessions were exhausting and at times excruciating, peeling back the armor Chloe had spent years constructing. Yet, paradoxically, the process allowed her to breathe again, to glimpse the possibility of forgiveness, not only from those she had hurt, but, eventually, from herself. She started to journal late into the night, recording moments of regret, flashes of hope, and quiet insights that ambition twisted by fear could lead even the kindest soul astray. And that atonement was a road not a single act. It was not easy, even as the furor over her actions faded from public conversation. Chloe knew that real progress required facing her victims and herself without flinching. She reached out first to Riley and Ava, who, after initial hesitation, agreed to meet her in a quiet park far from Ridgeway's judging eyes. The conversation was awkward, earnest, and full of silences, weighted with grief. Chloe spoke the truth she had held back for so long, her fear of failure, her jealousy, her rationalizations, her guilt. Tears were shed, tempers flared, but in the end, something fragile but genuine passed between them. A glimmer of understanding, if not complete absolution. Madison took longer to speak with Chloe. When they finally met, it was in a sunlit cafe where the ghosts of high school felt very far away. Their conversation was quiet and careful. Madison listened as Chloe offered the apology she should have given months earlier, her voice thick with sorrow. For Madison, forgiveness did not mean forgetting, nor instantly rekindling trust. But as she looked across the table at the girl she'd once called a sister, she understood that letting go was more about freeing herself than excusing Chloe. They parted, not as friends or enemies, but as two young women who had faced the truth and chosen to move forward without carrying the poison forward. Bit by bit, Chloe began to reconstruct her life, enrolling in online college courses and volunteering at a local youth program where her experience with both failure and recovery proved oddly magnetic to students struggling with their own choices. She wrote an essay about her downfall, an eventual journey toward honesty, submitting it anonymously to a national magazine for teens. To her astonishment, it was published and quickly went viral, not as a cautionary tale to gloat over, but as an exploration of how a single mistake, authentically faced, can be remade into a beginning. As autumn cooled the city, the four young women charted new directions. Ridgeway High itself was forever changed. Administrators instituted more thoughtful honor code interviews, invested in mental health staff, and even invited former students, including Riley and Ava, to speak about the true costs of unchecked ambition and the value of honesty. The old circle of friends grew into a memory, both sweet and bruised, mourned, but cherished for what it had once been and what it had taught them all. Madison, embracing her future with a clear-eyed resolve, packed for her gap year abroad with genuine anticipation. Riley launched her own public mural project, reflecting stories of resilience, while Ava was accepted into a leadership program for young women in public service. Chloe, miles apart but forever connected to them by this chapter, found peace not in reclaiming her old role, but in accepting her new one, living proof that accountability, vulnerability, and courage could write their own kind of redemption. The city was the same, the skyline unchanged, the pulse of ambition unrelenting, but the girls who once thought nothing could tear them apart now stood on their own, wiser for the faults and fractures that had shaped them. What lay ahead for each was uncertain, but for the first time, all of them could face it without flinching. The pain of betrayal, the grief of loss, and the hard-fought lessons of forgiveness did not close the book on their youth. It simply turned the page. In the end, closing the chapter didn't mean erasing the past. It meant forging ahead, stronger, softer, and ready, at last, to begin again.